I received the divorce papers via email while I was still in the desert. 13 years of marriage came to an end in a PDF attachment. My name's Nathan, a 42-year-old staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I'd been stationed in Kandahar for 4 months when Becky decided she couldn't wait any longer. The subject line said, "Let's be adult about this," and the email itself contained just 3 sentences. She'd already filed the papers, and not just that, but also had already drained our joint account and moved her new boyfriend Jeremy into our house in Spokane. I read the email twice, then closed my laptop, and I took a shower in the communal stall. I got dressed for my shift and said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my bunk that night, I replied with just one word: understood. That was all. No arguing, no pleading, no threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, noticed something was off. "You good, man?" he asked without lifting his eyes from his book. "Yeah," I replied. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded, and that was the end of it. Military guys know when to respect silence. The truth is, I wasn't shocked. 6 months before deployment, things had already started shifting. Small changes. Becky stopped asking about my day. She began working late at the dental office, where she took calls. She started going to the gym 3 times a week, but somehow never broke a sweat. New clothes and new friends I never met. New passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her, didn't dig through her messages or follow her around. That's not how I operate. But I wasn't oblivious either, so I made some quiet moves of my own. Nothing extravagant, just precautions. I stashed important documents in a storage unit across town. Birth certificate, marriage license, and house deed. Only my name on it, thanks to the VA loan military benefits paperwork. I also moved my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silver into the same unit, things that mattered. I opened a separate account at a different bank and started funneling part of my pay there. Not enough for her to notice, but enough to ensure I wouldn't be starting from scratch if things went sideways. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was bidding farewell to a colleague, not a husband leaving for war. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't realize was that I had already prepared for this moment. And what she couldn't grasp was that I don't start fights, but I do finish them. I met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between tours, crashing at my buddy Jason's place in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school, but ended up working admin at a dental practice instead. "Less stress," she said. 8 months later, we were married. Becky used to say she was proud of my service, though she never truly understood it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist. She had no military background in her family. She'd often ask when I was going to get a real job, unaware that after 15 years in the Army, it had become more than just a job to me. It was my career. We bought our house in 2014. It wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, in a quiet neighborhood. My name was the only one on the mortgage since the VA loan was in my name, but I put her on the deed because that's what married people do, share things. My dad passed away a year after we got married from a heart attack while shoveling snow. Then my mom passed 3 years later from lung cancer, even though she never smoked. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough for Becky and me to pay off her student loans and still have a cushion. Over the course of our marriage, I deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. Every time I came back, Becky seemed more distant and restless, as if she had grown tired of playing the role she once fit into. Once, after I mentioned possibly extending my service for another 4 years, she told me, "I didn't sign up to be a military wife. I'm tired of being alone all the time," she said. I understood that. I did. But the Army was the only place I ever felt I truly belonged. I was good at what I did. People relied on me. In 2019, things started to change. Little things at first. Becky became annoyed when I called during her girls' nights. She started talking about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was now living her best life. She even made remarks about how we didn't have much in common anymore. I suggested counseling. She brushed it off, saying we were fine, just going through a phase. Then the late nights at work, weekends away with friends I'd never met, the new clothes, and the gym membership she rarely used all started piling up. I should have confronted her, but that's just not my way of handling things. I never have done it that way. My dad always taught me to think before I speak, to be certain before I act. So I observed and prepared quietly because something deep inside was telling me something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust that feeling. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. A notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal, $8,500. Almost all the money that was left. I put my fork down and checked the app. The balance in the joint account was down to $212.37. The savings we'd built up over the years, $47,000, was gone, transferred in an account I didn't recognize. Murphy, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over. "Bad news?" he asked. I locked my phone. "Nah, just some account stuff." That night, I called the bank from the base phone center. It turned out Becky had been moving money around for weeks. Started with small withdrawals, then gradually larger ones. The big transfers began the day after I deployed. I hung up the phone and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching guys laugh and chat with their families, their wives, their kids. Normal life happening around me, while mine was falling apart. That's when Wilson found me. "Heard from Alvarez that you look like you saw a ghost at dinner," he said. "What's up?" I don't usually share personal things, but Wilson had once pulled me out of a tough spot in Kandahar. I trusted him. My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house. I told him. She sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week. Wilson didn't offer the usual comforting phrases like, "I'm sorry," or "That's tough," or "You'll get through it." He just asked, "What's your plan?" "Not sure yet," I answered. He nodded and said, "Let me know if you need anything." That was the end of it. I didn't sleep that night. I grabbed my laptop and logged into our home security system. Something Becky probably forgot I could still check remotely. On the screen, a truck I didn't recognize was parked in our driveway. A man unfamiliar to me was walking our dog, drinking from my coffee mug, and wearing my Seahawk sweatshirt. Then I saw Becky in the kitchen, the one I'd renovated myself during my last leave. She was laughing, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was colder, more calculated. I shut the laptop and pulled out my phone. I made a list. Call James, my Army buddy turned lawyer. Review the VA loan details. Reach out to my master sergeant about emergency leave. Look over the home refinance documents. Something Becky had mentioned casually the year before. Make sure the security on my military pension accounts was solid. I didn't feel sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I felt focused, like I was preparing for something, like planning a mission. At that point, it was no longer about feelings. It was about strategy. At 0500 before my shift began, I emailed James with the subject line, "Need legal help." It was discreet, urgent. An hour later, his reply came, "Call me. Secure line only." When I hung up, I knew exactly what had to be done. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to make threats. I didn't even need to confront her directly. I just had to wait, watch, and let her actions set the trap. 2 months later, I was back in the U.S. I didn't tell Becky I was coming home. No calls, no texts. I simply checked into a motel in downtown Spokane, under a different name, and reached out to James. We met at a diner, about 10 miles from town. "You look like hell," he said as he slid into the booth. "Feel like it too," I replied. He handed me a folder. Got everything we discussed. The house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and this. He pulled out another piece of paper. "I found something interesting when I was going through your finances," James said, pointing to the document. It was a refinance application with my name on it, but it wasn't my signature. Whoever had signed it had tried to mimic my handwriting, but got the details wrong. "The middle initial is off, and the stroke pattern isn't right," James said. "Becky did this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. 3 months ago, James confirmed. She was trying to pull out $30,000 using the equity in the house. Since the VA loan is in your name, your signature is required. So she forged my signature, took out a loan against the house, cleaned out our accounts, and then sent me divorce papers? I asked. Busy woman. It gets better, James said. She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He's got a record, 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. Were my options? Several. James said, but first, you need to decide what you want. I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I wanted to understand there are consequences. James smiled. Then here's what we do. The next day, I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was gone, but Becky's car was still parked in the driveway. I parked down the street and sat there for a while, thinking about knocking on the door and confronting her. But that wasn't the plan. Instead, I went to the bank, met with the loan officer who had handled the refinance, and showed him my military ID, my real signature on my driver's license, and the forged documents. His face went white. I'll need to report this immediately, he said. I understand, I said. I've already filed a police report. That night, I got a text from Becky. Who have you been talking to at the bank? Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond to Becky's message. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office, filed paperwork contesting the refinance on the ground of fraud, and formally registered a notice that no changes could be made to property without my presence. 2 days later, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. Nathan, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults. The same word she used in her email. I still didn't respond. Later that afternoon, James called. They'd frozen the refinance money, but there was more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The one in your name? Yeah, I said. He got pulled over this morning, driving on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle. Good, I said. Anything else? He had some interesting things in the truck. Prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works. They weren't blank, I asked. Nope, they weren't blank, James replied. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads. Looks that way. The police are investigating. I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was escalating beyond what I had expected. Part of me wanted to call Becky, warn her, maybe even give her a chance to explain. Old habits die hard. But then I remembered the footage and security cameras, the images of my house, my dog, my life, being taken away like they meant nothing. This was the path I was on now, and there was no turning back. In fact, I didn't want to. The next morning, I met with the bank's fraud investigator, a guy named Thompson. He was short with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. This happens more often than you'd think, he said, spreading out documents on his desk. Spouse deploys. Other spouse sees an opportunity. I asked, what happens now? Thompson leaned back in his chair. We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance, but there's a problem. Some of the money's already gone. How much? I asked, dreading the answer. About half. $14,600. I leaned forward. Where did it go? Thompson hesitated. I'm not supposed to share that information. It's my house, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My name forged, my money stolen. He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen toward me. These are the transfers out of the refinance account. I scanned the list. There were multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer, someone I'd never heard of. Who's Daniel Spencer? Thompson shrugged. Not my department. But you should ask your lawyer to subpoena these records. I called James the moment I left the bank. Daniel Spencer. I said, let me run a check, he replied. An hour later, James called me back. Got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent. Specializes in quick sales, cash deals. I felt a heavy weight in my chest. She was planning to sell our house. James paused. Looks that way. The deposits were probably earnest money to get him moving on a listing. But here's where it gets interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan before. Jeremy Ryan, your wife's boyfriend, has closed 3 deals with him in the last 2 years. I sat down on a nearby park bench, trying to process the information. So this wasn't just Becky leaving me for some guy. This was... What? A planned operation? James was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. Maybe I did some digging into Jeremy Ryan. He has a pattern. Gets involved with women going through divorce, or with deployed spouses. 3 cases I've found so far. In each case, the woman's home gets sold well below market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a cut. Then he moves on. I could feel the anger and confusion rising in me. And Becky? She knew about this. It's hard to say. Maybe she's a victim, too. Or maybe she's in on it. I rubbed my face, trying to gather my thoughts. This wasn't just about Becky betraying me anymore. It was something much bigger, and now I had a whole new set of decisions to make. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. It was something much bigger, something carefully orchestrated. Other military families had fallen victim to this as well. What do we do? I asked James. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. James replied, this crosses state lines, involves military personnel and VA loans. They're interested. That night, I sat in my motel room, a beer in hand, lost in thought. I couldn't stop wondering if Becky had been manipulating me all along, or she had gotten caught up in Jeremy's scheme. Then again, did it even matter anymore? My phone buzzed, Becky again. Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud, and Jeremy got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. Then I typed, who is Daniel Spencer? The 3 dots appeared, then stopped, then started again, then stopped again. Finally, she responded, I don't know what you're talking about. I typed again, $14,600. Multiple transfers. House listing? No response for 10 minutes. Then, it's not what you think. I turned off my phone and went to bed, trying to silence the whirlwind in my mind. The next morning, James called. FBI wants to meet, he said. They've been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first, but you might be the case that breaks it wide open. For the first time since receiving that divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage had ended, but because the truth was finally coming to light. I met with the FBI agents at their field office in Spokane, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They recorded my statement and took copies of all the documents James and I had gathered. Your case helps establish a pattern, Agent Patel explained. It shows intent, organization. It makes a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents. I paused for a moment, then asked, what about Becky? The agents exchanged a look. We're still determining her level of involvement. Donovan said carefully, did she ever mention financial difficulties? Pressure to sell the house? I thought back, remembering. She kept saying we were house poor, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary. Agent Patel made a note. When did that start? About 6 months ago, I replied. Around the time she must have met Jeremy. And the refinance? Donovan asked. Never discussed it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed. I replied. They took more notes, asking a few more questions. Once we were done, Agent Patel handed me her card. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't confront your wife or Ryan. We need to build this case carefully. I nodded. Understood. That evening, I drove through the neighborhood again, parking down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back, likely retrieved from impound. Becky's car, however, was nowhere to be seen. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Becky. We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. Call it about the money. I showed the text to James over breakfast the next day. Don't go, he advised. Nothing good can come from talking to her right now. I won't, I said, but I want to know what she's up to while she thinks I'm meeting her. We drove to the house at 9:30 a.m., parked across the street. At 9:45, Becky came out, got into her car, and drove off to a riverfront park. "Now what?" James asked. "Now we wait," I replied. 20 minutes later, a car pulled into our driveway. The logo of a real estate agency was on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him. They exchanged a few words, then went inside. "Should we follow them?" James asked. I shook my head. "No need. I installed security cameras last year, interior and exterior. They upload to cloud storage." James smiled. "You didn't mention that before." "Never came up," I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and angled the screen so James could see. Spencer and Jeremy were in our living room. Spencer was taking photos of the house, and Jeremy was pointing out various features. I turned up the volume. "Should list by the end of the week," Spencer was saying. "I've already got a potential buyer lined up." "All cash as usual," Spencer said. "For how much?" Jeremy asked. "Probably around $420,000. We'll list it at $470,000. They'll offer $420,000. Everyone walks away satisfied. "What about her husband?" "Becky says he's stirring up trouble." Spencer brushed it off. Typical military type. They complain, but with deployments and obligations, they usually settle to keep things quiet. I looked over at James. "You getting all this?" He nodded, phone in hand, recording everything. I sent the security footage link to Agent Patel with a short note. "It's happening now." Within half an hour, FBI vehicles swarmed the property. I watched from a distance as agents arrested Spencer and Jeremy. Then my phone rang. It was Agent Patel. "We got them on tape admitting to the scheme, fraud, conspiracy, wire fraud, attempted sale under false claims," she said. "We'll need your official statement." "Of course," I replied. "And Mr. Briggs," she added, "your wife just arrived." She looked shocked. I glanced down the street and saw Becky standing on the lawn, hands covering her mouth, while agents removed boxes of evidence from the house. "What's going to happen to her?" I asked. "That depends," Patel said carefully, "on what she knew and on what you want." I stared at Becky for a long while. 13 years of marriage. The early days had been good. Then it all changed. "I just want the truth and for justice to be done," I said quietly. The federal investigation moved swiftly. Jeremy and Spencer took plea deals and exposed each other and others involved. It turned out to be a multi-state scam aimed at military families. Becky claimed ignorance, saying Jeremy told her I was hiding assets and planning to leave her broke. She insisted the refinance was Jeremy's idea, and she just went along with it. Maybe she was telling the truth, or maybe not. In the end, Becky agreed to settlement. She returned all the stolen money, gave up any rights to the house and my military pension, and signed confession admitting to the forgery. In return, I chose not to press criminal charges. Our divorce was finalized 6 months after I received that email in Kandahar. It was filed as a no-fault divorce, a clean break, all things considered. On the day the final documents were signed, Agent Patel called me. "Jeremy Ryan was sentenced today, 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft," she said. "Spencer got 12. I thought you'd want to know." "Thanks," I replied. She continued. "We also uncovered that they targeted at least 11 other military families. Your case helped us see the pattern. Because of you, those families might recover their losses." After the call, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment, watching the sun go down. I thought about the other service members who went off to serve their country, believing their homes and marriages were secure, only to return to betrayal and loss. I hadn't set out to take down Jeremy and Spencer's operation. I just wanted back what was rightfully mine. But sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Becky. "I never meant for things to end this way." I didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. A year later, I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many painful memories. Too much deceit. I used the money to buy a small cabin near Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land, a creek out back, and no neighbors in sight. I took early retirement from the Army. After 20 years, I'd done my part. I got a German Shepherd and named him Scout. Started doing carpentry work around the community. Nothing elaborate, but it kept me occupied and helped cover my expenses. My pension handled the rest. Sometimes my thoughts drifted back to Becky. I sometimes wonder where Becky ended up. James mentioned she'd gone back to her hometown in Oregon and was working at a new dental clinic. Starting over, I suppose. I didn't feel any anger toward her anymore. Actually, I didn't feel much of anything. She'd made her decisions, and I had made mine. Then one day, a letter arrived from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband, a Navy sailor, had been deployed when Jeremy and Spencer tried to pull the same scam on her. The FBI had passed along my name. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but you saved our home. Thank you for standing up when it would have been easier to let it go." I read that letter twice before pinning it to my fridge. On the hard days, when the quiet was overwhelming or the past crept in too sharply, I'd glance at it and remember that something good had come out of all the chaos. Last I heard, Jeremy and Spencer were still behind bars. For once, the system had done its job. As for me, I was slowly rebuilding, moving forward a day at a time, creating a life that no one could steal, fake, or betray. A life that was finally and completely mine.